Hey everybody, this is Kevin Rankin, All Access Live with Kevin Rankin, and I have just sent Dave a link real quick to join this one. So I apologize about um, the inconveniences here. This is it's been a little bit of a challenge technologically, but we're going to get this happening. So stand by here for a moment while we wait for Mr. Wakeling. And in the meantime, if you could do me a favor, go to the link below, go to youtube.com/@accesskevin. Hit the subscribe button, like this video, share it with your friends. This will be archived at accesskevin.com briefly, but in the meantime, I would love it if you share your friends. So, right, like on cue. Look at that. I've got Mr. Dave Wakeling. How you doing, sir?
It's good. It's just now I seem to have the reflection of the television in my glasses.
Well, it looks like you're Max Headroom right now, so it's super 80s, right?
Lounging on my bed in the position that Romans used to eat on, isn't it? Leaning on the elbow. So I'm going to pretend that I'm eating like exotic delicacies here.
People need to be, yeah, they've got to feed you grapes.
You know, King of Scar. Don't you think I've earned some peelers, really?
I love, there's nothing smug about that, man. Here, let me do I'm going to actually paste this link over to the other people that had been watching on the other stream, just so they know where to go. So thank you, man, for joining me and working through the technological issues. This is great.
Sounds a lot clearer. You should do this Zoom.
Yeah, well, there are a few reasons. I did the other method because it aggregates to Facebook and Twitch and all the other.
Oh, does it? I say yes.
Yeah. So this one, we're just on YouTube, but you know, as long as it works this way, then we're solid. And you've got a control panel back there. So this does not look like you know, a panel van in the back of
no, it's nowhere near. No, it's in fact, it's so complicated that you end up having to get somebody from up the front of the bus to help you open the blinds and the windows and everything to start with. But I'm up and running now.
They're automated. You've got like the electric blinds.
Yes.
Nice.
And a slide out, so it makes a bigger room, you know, for when it starts up. And to be honest, I could just live here. It's like the perfect isolation cell. You know, if you ever found yourself in solitary confinement, if you could get yourself a spot like this, you'd be like, no, that's good.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Food, find myself. That's
just
most
leave
of
the food outside the door. I'll get it when I'm ready. You know, it would be great. I like it, to be honest. It's kind of that. Some of the pandemic was really worrying because you felt isolated, but sometimes the pandemic felt really reassuring because you weren't allowed to go anywhere anyway. So you felt really safe in your little nest because nobody else was allowed to come out and get you.
Were you in the UK at that point, or were you in the US?
No, in the US.
Okay.
I've been here for 35 years. I'm a dude.
Kevin.
I just kept the accent because the girls liked it, but I've been here for 35 years, longer than I've been was in Birmingham. And that was a weird time when that happened. You realized you lived somewhere else for longer than you lived where you were born. Interesting.
So are you dual citizen? You've actually gotten your US citizenship?
No, I'm a green carder.
Okay.
I don't know why. There was some kind of heritage thing about liking the notion of being English.
Yeah, well,
without actually having to live there.
It's regal, you know. Well, I mean,
I think it was more down to the poetry end of things, you know, the Shelley, Shakespeare end of things, which I think's the British literary heritage is a good one that I enjoyed. So absolutely. I think it was more to do with that, and so I kind of like it really, because I'm not really civically involved in anything in America. I can't vote. I can't be on a jury. And I'm absolutely happy with that because I don't want to do either.
Right. Well, jury duty is a tough thing for a touring musician, man. It is, for sure. Do you have your whole band?
They did try and get me in once, and I said, I can't do it. I'm a green carder. No, under certain circumstances, if we're short in the jury pool, you just check your paperwork, you can get called up. So, and and I said, oh, I don't think I'd be any good at it. I don't know the laws over here, you know. No, that doesn't matter. You know, it's a matter of common sense. I was like, God, I cannot get out of this. And I said, well, to be honest, I said, the only thing I do know about it is there seems to be a lot of money in the American judicial system. So the more money you can pay a lawyer, the more chance you're going to get away with it. And the less money you pay a lawyer, the more chance you're going to go to jail. And I said, so I'd be bearing that in mind with anything I had to sit on, and I'd likely want to let people off because of that to try and address the system. And they said, we'll call you if we need you, sir. Thank you. I was like, God, thank heavens, I finally found the magic note there.
That's it, man. You just got to claim.
I've never heard since. So, and I still do worry a little bit about that in our judicial system. Not that I can point to one that's any better. The British classes judicial system's based on money, but we call it class.
Right.
You know, so you don't necessarily give somebody $500 under the table. You give them a beautiful bottle of port to put down for their son's 21st.
That's a very English thing for sure, man. You know, I was telling you before we went live, you and I had a chat about Mike Score, you know, that I felt like when you come out and hang out with my boss, he seems to be at, you know, he's in a better place. I think you're a really good influence on him. But
I think we remind each other that we're survivors.
Right.
And that you should enjoy your concerts while you can, probably.
Yeah.
And probably like me, he's amazed that he remembers the words 40 years ago, never mind about a hall full of people singing along. It's almost surreal. So you do count your blessings, and that your songs lasted a bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for that 15 minutes, but that they meant something to somebody along the way. And that's really, that's the value of a song that doesn't wane, kind of.
That's a good point. You know, when you mentioned that, you know, I'm always amazed when people show up at these gigs and they say, oh, Mr. Wakeling, remember in 1982, you know, we were backstage at that one show and I brought, you know, my girlfriend was in the red dress. Remember that? And, you know, you've got to either fake it or just, you know, offend them, right? Because you don't remember every detail.
Absolutely no idea, I say.
but
I'll take your word for it.
But
no, it's lovely that it would mean so much to them, isn't it? You know,
the effect you leave on them, right? I mean, like, because people talk to me about those things a lot, right? Not having written those songs, I hear that a lot about, you know, the beat or even general public. You know, they talk about where they were at in their life when those songs were popular. Or
I think if songs hit you at a formative age, they hit you kind of deep. And so you can always go back to those songs and it reminds you almost instantly of how you felt, even the smell of the room. Sometimes I can remember things around 60s hits that I liked, and it's as though it transports you back to that time. It's not just listening, and it's not just memory. It's like something opens up. It's more than a musical memory. I call them crystal moments, but since crystal meth got its name, just used to call it speed and be done with it. But I don't use that phrase so much, but that's what it seems like to me. It's like a diamond of a memory that has got all the various senses captured within it, and the music is what opens the little box up, the music box, and you get all of the smell it. I'm doing it now.
It's true. Yeah, man.
Still there. So that's funny, isn't it? How it links to all those various sense memories.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned the smell, the sense. For me, like record stores were really special that way. You know,
I just
I mean, you think about
they smell different if there was secondhand records.
That's true. Yeah, man.
Tobacco and weed
and some incense, right? In those old record stores. Yeah, I love. Hey, man, we got Mike Skills in the chat right now, man. Mike, a dear friend there from the Romantics, of course, and I know he's a big fan of Mr. Wakeling. So,
big fan of the Romantics, me.
Yeah, but who isn't, man? We got all sorts of your fans here. Catherine Cluth from Canada and Janine.
I don't have a list. Is that because we shifted formats.
Yeah. So a handful of them came over, and so I do appreciate you guys coming in and share the love, everybody. When we first started that other stream, I saw that there were some people asking questions about early days, and I try not to make sort of formal interviews with this, because when you and I get a chance to talk backstage or even before, it's really fun to kind of get to know Dave offline. I mean, you've answered the same questions about the beat and general public and ranking Roger and all those things so many times that your fans know a lot of that stuff. But one thing I appreciated knowing was, you said that you didn't have an aversion to talking politics, because that's sort of a formative, or at least an impactful thing on a lot of people's lives. Your early music, you talked about writing something with sort of a political bent. Politics had a different sense then, especially in the US, right?
I don't think that people really dare put much politics in songs, because you don't only get pulled off of the radio that you've got, but you get told pretty clearly, don't bother making any more because you're not going to get on. And that was quite a chilling effect from the Dixie Chicks on, I think.
Right.
Where in the 80s, we were lucky because the record companies had missed out on punk. They didn't get it. They didn't think it was going to be popular. They thought it was out of tune. They don't know how to play their instruments. And so they missed it, kind of. And so post-punk, 78, 79 into 80, before New Wave, the bridge between punk and New Wave, as it's saying, the record companies were very open because they didn't want to look foolish and miss the next one as well. So they were overeager in a way. And although we had songs railing against capitalism and the Prime Minister, even though it was with a jaunty reggae beat, the record company never once mentioned anything about any sensitivities about mixing pop and politics. We brought out Stand Down Margaret as a single, and there was some criticism, were we now profiteering off our politics? And so we got the record company to donate all the royalties from the single to 4 different anti-nuclear groups and put it on the record sleeve with their addresses.
Wow.
So people bought the single, they got this, and we put the money there. And the record company didn't bat an eyelid. They didn't say, well, watch out, Dave. Nobody said anything. Perhaps they should have done, because you can push your luck with things like the BBC. And so less doors were open to us afterwards. Even if we brought out a song that was clearly non-political, they'd go, watch them, they're sneaky.
Really?
It's probably about Margaret Thatcher again, I bet, it'll show up. So,
you mark yourself.
We did get a bit of a warning label on us for that, I think. But I thought it was worth it at the time. And they had a TV series called The Crown about the royal family. And they had one episode about Margaret Thatcher. And she wasn't portrayed in a very decent light, especially not really through the Queen's eyes. She came across like as if she was a challenging empress, somewhat, And that's not cricket, is it?
Yeah.
Start getting the royal family moving their lower lip.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but you still emulate that perfectly.
Restrained imperial angst.
That's right.
I just want to chop 6 people's heads off now. I'm that mad. But give me an ostrich now.
That's very Birmingham, man.
Anyway, she didn't get down very well in the show.
Yeah.
She wasn't portrayed very kindly. And instead of the Crown theme tune, which was very popular, and they would play for a long time because there was a lot of credits, they played Stand Down Margaret instead.
Really?
So 40 years later, rising like a phoenix, it went perfectly with the depiction of Margaret Thatcher as not being a very straightforward character.
Yeah.
Or acting very straightforward, but having quite a lot of devious aims, really. And did quite a lot of harm to the English psyche. One of the reasons why I kind of preferred, after I'd been here a while, to live in America. I think really, no monarchy, which is good for me because I'm not keen. It's a pyramid that keeps everything else in its place.
Well,
I've got nothing against them personally, you know.
Doesn't that kind of sound like the US anymore, though, too? You know?
Well, it's funny how America got rid of all of the British institutions so they could set up their own exactly the same.
I know, man. Like, yeah,
give me liberty or give me oligarchy.
Yeah.
Well, oligarchy, that
Right.
seems all right.
It's man.
You can have special schools on the East Coast.
Only
our kids can go to.
It's a cyclical thing, man.
It's human nature, isn't it? And that's the only thing we very rarely take into account, I think. That's what goes wrong with politics, is that every political treatise is written from the point of view of people being genuine, sincere, and consistent. Whereas we all know if under enough pressure, we would give up where our mom is hiding. Right. We know it. And so I wish they could write that into, because we write a deal out, they do it through the Congress or the Parliament, whatever. And it's put together by lobbyists who put in there little trick pathways. So there's ways already through the legislation before it's presented. And everybody goes, that'll stop them. And then they just go up through the new roads that have been carved out through the legislation. It's too complicated for non-technocrats to follow. Right. And it's a shame that it happens. It's a shame that we don't start these political documents with, we know most of us are going to try and cheat on this. Right. Well, take that into account before we kick off.
Man, I mean, you talk about like the cheating in the political system. I've got two sons, like one's 21, 20, and the other one's 23. And, you know, now that they're of voting age, they were really dismayed when, you know, they discovered that the political system was so rigged in so many ways, and people were bought and sold, and all those things that they thought were just, and you know, and justice itself, you know, was something that, you know, you held to such a high standard. And, you know, we're seeing more and more as they pull the covers back that, you know, there's
you have to look. It's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, isn't it? You know, when you're looking at a building and then it's not quite right, you have to first look at the foundations of it, you know, and it's never really been sorted, has it? You know, that it was built on slavery.
Right.
And it was built on genocide.
Yeah.
And it's never really been dealt with. So it's always going to be there because it's never really been dealt with. And then you try building a building on top of that.
Can't help but crumble.
And the slavery is continuing. And it still continues in many ways to this day, because it gets caught up in the mortar between the bricks of your institutions. You can paint it whatever color you like, but it's in the mortar. It's between the bricks. I think that's what institutional racism is, really.
Right.
It's already put into the mindset. For example, you're allowed to swear on this show.
Yeah.
What the fuck are African Americans? I've got a son and a daughter. They're nothing like anybody I've ever met from Africa. Right. They are Californians, and they're African Americans. What's that about? It's in the language,
right? The labeling,
in the language. Black people and white people, and black people aren't black, and white people aren't white.
Right.
And they're not different races. There's only one race,
human race, baby.
Sapien, with the exception that white people have got a load of Neanderthal in us, which most people don't.
Right. I can't disagree with that, man.
But it's weird because it's right there in the language, and it's a clue when something's wrong. If you have to over exaggerate the language in order to try and make what should be a simple point,
right,
it's because you're lying. or you've built something on a shaky foundation.
Yeah.
The other part of it really is the Bill of Rights. What was it really? Or
Right.
was it a bill of goods?
Mm.
In England, we were taught a very cynical impression of American politics because we lost, because we got our asses kicked. But the notion we were told was that America quickly scrambled to prevent a French Revolution happening where the people actually would get power. So they cobbled something together that looked like it was equality for all, and then made sure that you had to be a white man with a load of land, else nobody else got a say. And they got away with it. But
Right.
it wasn't honest. It wasn't decent. And we keep talking about the State of the Union and this imperfect nation that we're striving to. It's hard to get the spire to keep straight if you're built on dodgy foundations, unless you go back and you shore up the foundations. And now we have the technology to do that.
Right.
You could create an America based on the language that people wave at each other in the Constitution when they're trying to tell them how much they hate them in the name of America. I've never met a country where people hate each other so much in the name of the love of the country. I don't hate even Americans that I really disagree with.
Sure.
To be honest. But I wonder about like Donald Trump. I think he loves America, right? But the list of people he hates is about 70% of the population. It's like, how do you say you love a country if you hate 200 million people who live there?
And that's giving credit.
You know, I don't even hate him for it, but I think he's a beautiful lesson. Watch very carefully.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that exposed a lot of those cracks. You talk about the dodgy foundation, and with the elections, I mean, that you could really see how divided the country was, and how, people that
I don't think it is divided. I think it's been forced apart. I think there's a lot of Russian money in it. I think there's a lot of stuff on Twitter and Facebook in the last few years. You can even tell the translations are so crummy. It should be read in Cyrillic,
Right. And the manipulation is crazy.
The same message on Facebook and Twitter coming from all sorts of people, and it all come from the same Russian source. So that kind of spoilt a lot of online debate for me.
Do you like to debate online?
Even the insults were more Russian. You stupid idiot! You stupid idiot! Some skull. What is this? A vodka party? I don't know. I'm weary of the whole thing. I'm weary of but the world's in a crisis. That's why this is happening. People are getting terrified. None of our institutions work for us anymore. Capitalism's faltering because democratic capitalism can't keep up with autocratic capitalism. And sadly, our lead capitalists have decided that we ought to go autocratic then. That's the cure for that.
Well, do you see
too much voting? That's what's going on here.
You travel. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you travel so much, like even around, outside the country. One of the things that I notice is that when you go into different places of the country and people have opinions about what America is doing right or wrong, but they're so that they're not looking at a macrocosm. They're not looking globally at other countries where things that, you mentioned that the world is really struggling with a lot of things. The pandemic certainly affected every single person on the planet, without a doubt, right? But there are some countries that have been able to manage and handle it better in the way that they they refocused how they wanted business to.
America's not done that badly internationally.
Sure.
But it's funny. I mean, it's a bit like thinking that the baseball championships is a World Series when nobody else plays it, unless we buy them some gear, give them sponsorships to try and lure them in. Well, the Japanese had no choice; they were told to, weren't they? But it's the same thing. So if we have a recession, we think it's an American recession. A lot of people don't notice that it's a worldwide recession, and in fact, England, for example, is doing much worse
Right.
than America, and Joe Biden's not managed to have much to do at all with
Right.
policies in the UK. Or Turkey's got a 70% inflation rate, and that's not Joe Biden, is it? But each time we have a problem, even for example, slavery,
Yeah.
we think that's something that happened in America.
Right.
We don't think of it that it was something that went on for 2,000 or 3,000 years
Right.
before America.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people don't know about, well, a lot of people don't know about boats and boats of Irish slaves who were sold into America, or the Barbary slaves, where loads of white slaves were stolen straight out of British villages on the coast and sold as slaves in Libya and Tunisia.
Sure.
So, but in America, slavery means
Right.
what we
Well,
did 100 years ago. So we have to be careful, as you say, to think it's a bigger world. And it's interesting to compare the statistics between various countries, taking into account that you probably can't trust any numbers that you see.
Sure.
Not give you a completely accurate rendition of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because the whole world's in a bit of a crisis and everybody's having to make up stories. And funnily enough, everybody's acting big and strong just at the time when their countries are actually at the weakest they've been. Like Russia's not doing great.
Right.
I like watching YouTube programs during the pandemic. I watched lots of Russian bloggers about life in Russia, all different places of the world. Very interesting people, very erudite, analytical. And then they'd have to go out in the garden, walk down to the bottom of the garden, have a shit in this shed, and then come back and be really erudite again. And I was like, you're that erudite, let's get some indoor plumbing, indoor toilets, roads with asphalt on them, before we start trying to tell the rest of the world how to move along here. Well, let's get some basics done. So it rather surprised me. I didn't realize, that rural Russia is, I don't know, 50, 60, 100 years behind rural America. It hasn't moved on, it seems to have gone backwards, if anything. And isn't that funny? That's at a time where people want to put people right.
Right.
Then go to Ukraine and the people are stealing toilets and stealing bathtubs and washing machines. The troops are looting toilets. And I said, I knew there was going to be a problem about it. I'm sick of going down that shed in the snow. Burns my ass. I'm going to Ukraine and get me one of them toilets. One of them German jobbies with this inspection plate. That's what I want. Inspection tray.
I love how
that's weird, isn't it? Yeah. It's weird how that it turns out that way, that people get the most aggressive when actually they're at their most vulnerable and they're trying to cover up.
Sure.
Well, even poor China wants to take over Taiwan, I hear, but they built skyscrapers of apartment buildings that they can't finish. People have already put their life savings into them, and now they've been unfinished for so long they're not stable. So they're pulling them down, and there's crowds of people whose life savings are now turning into rubble.
Yeah,
and they want to show everybody else how to live.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, those are the things. Obviously, I mean, you watch global news. I
watch a lot of different news, and YouTube's great for that, isn't it? I like it. I like DW News, a German channel that used very cleverly my initials as a bit of a marketing thing.
Of course they did.
It's great, very analytical, great follow-up, a range of opinions on the same subject. Sometimes gets a bit heated, but usually gets to the point before it does. And then the next day you can watch a program that the story's developed.
Yeah.
Whereas, you can get quick breaking news in America, but then, there's a train crash in Alabama. But stop. And so we're going to watch somebody standing in the rain over and over again.
Right.
So it gets a bit more ambulance chasing.
Right.
Blood cells, doesn't it? So the American You got to pick and choose. But I do, and I watch certain journalists on all the range of American channels, because sometimes it's nice to know where the opposition's coming from.
Sure.
For me, it's a nice game. Something dreadful will happen, and I try and predict to myself what's the excuse that Fox News has for why this is the exact opposite of the way it actually looks. And I try and guess what it is, and it's like, what about somebody else who did something that's not really the same, but it looks like it from a distance. I always try and guess, and I click over, and quite often I get it right.
It's good that you can actually laugh about it, man, because for me, it was exhausting. It's like having a conversation with somebody that there's going to be no logic, in the conversation at all. And so it's, like baiting your head against.
It's emotional, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't really appeal on logic.
Right.
When people are desperate, they want somebody to look up to that they think is going to protect them. And it doesn't matter if the evidence of their own eyes and ears shows them the exact opposite of that.
Right.
It's like, although it's starting to catch on, Trump called everybody out into the streets to protest, and somebody mentioned, well, the last time they did that, they've been locked up for 2 years, and you haven't offered to bail anybody out yet. So so people are slowly learning.
Well,
they didn't come out in the same waves. But
I think
it's down to us, isn't it? You get the government you deserve, and American people generally are not interested in politics. So long as they're doing all right, they don't really care too much. And so snake oil salesmen take over because of that.
Yeah.
So if you don't care, somebody else is going to abuse that.
Right.
And sadly, it's always the least and the weakest, the most vulnerable of us who bear the brunt of it. If you're young and strong and white, you probably dodged most of it, know. But other people are not so nimble socially. And so every time we let each other down with hypocrisy, other people a bit lower down the totem pole bear the price. That's what trickles down. The money doesn't trickle down. They tried that. People are too greedy.
Right.
They should have took that into account. As it's trickling down, everybody tries to grab a bit more than their due.
Right.
Or have another bit. By the time it gets down to the second half, there's none left.
Right.
And
it's interesting that you mentioned, that having been here in the US for 35 years now, you have a good sense of what kind of goes on politically here, but you're still keeping an eye on everything that happens back home. So do you still have family back in England?
Yes, not so much, less by each year, but still have family and friends, and it still fascinates me because it's much in the same way, the same battle.
Sure.
On Wednesday in England, Boris Johnson has to go before a panel for 4 hours, live, televised, to try and convince everybody that he didn't continually lie about having parties and getting together whilst he was fining people 10, 15 grand for doing the same, or preventing people from seeing their mom, who had to stay in the house for 2 months by herself and then was found dead.
Right.
And never got to see any of her family because of Boris's laws, which he flouted. And now he's got to go on television for 4 hours and try and convince us that the emperor has clothes on.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and isn't that funny? Because Donald Trump, another crazy, wacky blonde guy who gave us blondes a bit of a bad name there. Comb your hair, lads. Keep it neat. You could be a Viking. You don't have to be a dick about it,
Yeah.
And now there's talk that Donald Trump might also get indicted for his Stormy Daniels, weather business on the same day. That's interesting, isn't it? And Putin's just been named as a war criminal with an arrest warrant out for him. So it's funny, isn't it? The world turns, and autocrats fail pretty quick when they fail to deliver.
Right.
people can turn on them very, very quickly. Then once they feel let down, it can go from cultishness to that traitor, he betrayed us. It goes to pitchforks real quick. And
it's
I think
interesting that
there's elements of that starting now. And after a certain amount of time, you don't even care about being ripped off. You just care about being thought of that you're stupid whilst you're being ripped off. That's the
ignorant.
That's the bit that chaps your ass.
Nobody wants to admit that they made a mistake, right? I mean, like they were foolish and ignorant in the decisions that they made about.
I wouldn't know how to do it any better. You know, Trump, Biden, Boris Johnson. I'm not saying that I'd want to jump in and have a go.
Right. Well,
I don't think it's the way we have things at the moment. I don't think it's really viable. But I used to fear Armageddon or nuclear annihilation and stuff. I'm just feeling lucky enough I might get to live to see it now.
Yeah.
Fear, you know, once I'm out, who cares anyway? You know, I'm nearly done. I've had my innings mainly, so
your innings
on my bucket list would be a nuclear explosion.
Oh my God. I love that joy though, man. I mean, you really do seem like you don't let a lot get to you, do you?
No, it all does. It
does
all gets to me and I just laugh through it. I don't know why. I feel things too. I get upset by stuff I see on the TV. I have to look away, and a tear reaches my eye too quick. You know, I have to be really careful with that. I react emotionally to stuff. Sometimes that's not always been great because, you know, I thought I was following my intuition and being true to myself. There's an element of that, but it's also just being your reactive self.
Sure.
And overreacting to perceived fears or threats, you know, the old fight or flight response, but always got a quick answer, always that sort of thing. And
when was that? Has it affected you in a real like profound way in the past?
Yes, I think so. It's given me a little extra sensitivity writing lyrics that I can write words that connect to people, that resonate with them. And I had a bit of a practice of trying to write the first verse very personally, almost confessionally, and the second verse, examples of similar things I'd seen in other people's behavior. And then a third verse was the universal acceptance of the situation and what we might be able to do to move through it together. Was the idea of it. And that was kind of, I was sorting it out in my own head, really, as much as anything else. And so it helped me with that, I think. But then I don't think it necessarily helped me in real life situations where you've got to deal with other people with hyped up emotions too. And that could trigger me too quick. And I could get into black and white thinking, you know, right, that's it. That's it. I'm leaving.
Right. Well,
I'm moving to America. That's it. So it was quite, you know, and you don't see it at the time, but to see it looking back, reactive, and it turns out just really from over feeling things a bit too much, which is very good for a lyricist,
right?
Not necessarily that great for somebody trying to be a celebrity.
Well, how about as a dad? I mean, you talked about having 2 children, right? So,
well, it can be good and bad.
Yeah.
The good bit is you can be really, really childish and really, really connect with kids.
Yeah.
But then you go on tour and you're away so long. I remember once came back and my daughter was with her mum at the front door and opened the front door and she hid behind her mom because she didn't know who it was.
Oh no.
I'm back. Ah, who is it, mommy?
Oh no. Oh man. That
it was only like 2 or 3, maybe 3 months. But if somebody's little enough,
right, that's
enough to stop it being immediate, you know. So the first reaction was moral response to go cling and hide. So that's a warning sign. And you can't be as involved. You can't be continually.
Right.
involved. And I didn't do a terrific job first time round, so I had another go at it, and I did a bit better that time, and I got to be Coach Dave, AYSO, to do my own whistle, and then went to a lot of soccer and basketball games and stuff like that. And did a little bit academically, but I'm afraid I'm very much of the David Bowie school on that. And if the homework gets you down, you can throw it on the fire and take the car downtown. If you stay and I love a story, if you stay, you won't be sorry. Yes, I always been a bit like that. I couldn't be bothered with. I went to one of the best schools in the country. Couldn't be bothered. Lazy sod.
That sounds like a Mike Score line right there, actually. But
yeah, it was so built for feeding the middle ranks of the British Empire, which I connected to the monarchy, and it all seemed a bit of a sham. And whatever else I was going to do, I knew I didn't want a life in service of the British Empire.
Yeah.
Because especially as it didn't exist anymore, but they were still pretending it did.
Sure. Yeah. It's all for show now. It's good theater,
It's remarkable, really. I don't know. They're going to have the coronation, aren't they? It's costing £100 million, so $140 million. We have members of the royal family visiting food banks and being really appreciative of the help everybody's giving out here.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this picture?
Yes.
They're having 2 new thrones built, and I think they're £1 million each. They're really nice thrones, though.
Of
Kevin.
course.
Come on, mate. No,
not like the thrones that are being stolen in Ukraine from the Russian. Those are different thrones.
Oh, right? Those thrones, yeah.
Yeah.
The German ones are the ones to go for, though.
Right.
I was horrified the first time I went. Well, no, because instead of pooing and it going in the water bit's at the front. So you poo and you get up and it's on a tray with no water.
Oh,
it's like live there and living, because of course you want to have a good look at it to see what the digestion is, and then you flush it. So whereas we don't want to, no, I don't want to know.
Right. Get it out of here.
No, I don't want to know. So yes, it's a bit shocking, that, but I bet the Russians had some of them. They'd be a lot happier.
That's true. Like, listen, kids, as these kids that are watching are wondering, like, what's it like to be on tour? They imagine like just rock star life. Now it's examining the different, toilet structures and different
toilets
areas
around the world. Yeah,
right.
Toilets around the world. They have some sayings about it, don't they? Wartime sayings. Did they take too long to remember? But the difference, you wanted French food and German toilets, not German food and French toilets.
Right. How often do you get over there to Europe? I mean, of course you do
Very
a lot
rarely.
of stuff.
Very rarely. England's the only place I go now. I would go, but we have so many shows enough to do here.
Yeah.
And you can play 100 shows and have 30 cities mad that you didn't come.
Right.
So we play America, we play Canada, we play England. We've talked about going to Europe, but now, because England's not part of Europe anymore, you have to register every piece of equipment, has to be weighed and numbered, and has to be searched by dogs, and you have to get a different bus to take you in Europe. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm fine, I'm good. YouTube has killed it for me, I'm afraid. No more wanderlust. So I just look up something. Like a couple of weeks ago, I fancied one of those floating cities in Vietnam,
Yeah.
And I got one of them in the boat, and you can like buy shrimps on sticks and stuff. There's no toilet, so you don't know where that. But anyway, you're not going to be on the boat long enough. But you get to see all the beautiful colours, but you don't get to smell any of the shitty water. You don't worry about, oh God, did I just put my hand in my mouth? I've just had it in the river. You don't have to do any of that. Is that a mosquito? Right. Why does that guy keep looking at us? He keeps trying to sell us this stuff. What's your wallet? You don't do any of that. You just do the nice bit. And then I go to Switzerland or something.
But,
So I do a lot of traveling on YouTube now.
Virtual tours.
I'm not going out there.
It was
people.
Interesting you mentioned that. So the conversation I had with my son, he talked about the next phase of sort of human evolution, right? That it will be uploading our brain, right? And so like we live through this like virtual memories, so they can implant things, and you can go and ski the Alps having never been there, right? The implant will put you there. And he talked about being able to perform on stage in front of 100,000 people.
Well, we used to use drugs for that, of course.
Right, right. Like, but you'll probably agree with me. What I told my son is, and he's a musician, I said, here's the thing, like you've been on stage. It's not just about being there on stage where you can hear that crowd, but think about as the curtain's starting to drop, as the audience is warming up, and you talked about the smells. We talked about scents earlier. You smell a little bit of the smoke that's in the room, or the hazers, or and
anticipation, sweat.
Oh, God, when the announcement starts going on,
you engage how the crowd is without looking at them. Really, you can smell what the sense of it is in the room. Yes, there is that too. I would have a bigger problem with that though. If you're going to have these situations set up for you to enjoy, it doesn't matter how technological it is, it's been done by another person.
Sure. Yeah.
And we know what people are like.
Right.
So I'm not having anybody else. I don't care how technological they can wrap it up. I don't want anybody else defining my experiences with their definition of an experience. For example, the reasons you just gave, or that different people on stage could have quite different effects. Like I always get the stage fright bit before. Why am I doing this? I'm an introvert. I don't even particularly like people, especially not in large numbers. I don't know, how did I get here? And I'm on the side of the stage and I say, well, too late now, isn't it, Dave? They're here. So you can't let them down, mate. So just do the one more concert and then let's call it a day.
Yeah.
And I feel terrified. And for a while, I didn't feel terrified and I didn't do as well. And it turns out that if you're not terrified, you're not really taking it seriously. Then you're just about to stand up above everybody with loads of lights on you and try and sing all the notes in tune. That's really scary.
That is, yeah.
And try and enjoy it and help them to enjoy it too. So if it is a scary process, it should be. And then I read something by a French writer, I can't remember which one, but he said that like a Jean Genet or Rimbaud or one of them kind of types. And he said that it was the butterflies that take an artist's soul to heaven. And when I read that, I stopped worrying about being scared to go on stage. I accepted it. I let it come in. I can feel it. Oh, here we go. Dave's overreacting. Fight or flight, fight or flight. Ranking Roger used to fall asleep 10 minutes before showtime, and we'd wake him up 1 minute before because the anticipation of the show was so much. He'd just have to lie down and fetal position. He couldn't stand that last 10 minutes. He had to lay down. And we go, okay, this is it, lad. And he'd jump up. But he couldn't stand there. He couldn't take the pressure of that 10 minutes. He had to flight it.
Interesting. Well, you know what? I'm always blown away when I hear people talk about being, having butterflies or stage fright after having been in the business, as long as you have. And is there, because for me, of course, I don't want to make a mistake. Live TV is the hardest thing for me. I never get nerves when we're playing a live show, no matter how many people. Live TV is different, right? Because it shouldn't be different. It should all be the same. It's all a performance. But if something goes wrong on TV, millions of people could see it. There are no do-overs.
I had one happen.
Did you?
Yeah, Jules Holland's Christmas party, and we Hands Off She's Mine first song. Rehearsals had gone absolutely brilliant. We were honking. All the other bands loved us, thought we were great, and did Hands Off She's Mine. And they wanted us to edit the songs down quite substantially to, because they've bled on, so they're like 4 to 5 minutes long, and they wanted them back to the 3-minute single version.
Sure.
Which was very tricky once you've been playing a song the same way for 20 years and there's 3 of them and So we hacked at them, hacked at them, hacked at them. And I couldn't remember all the changes. So we built this very clever idea of when it was coming up to a change, the saxophone player, musically trained, would give me a little look and a little nod as if everything's going great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know. So the song's going great. It starts off pretty well. You can tell we're a bit nervous, but we're doing it. We're okay. We're there. And we come to the bit where the toasting bit should come. And I look over to the saxophone player and he gives me a nod. And I go straight into the chorus, and it was wrong. He nodded to say it's going great, which was the thing. We said, let's make sure we don't do any nodding unless it's a change. Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's going great. And so I did it. And so I was like, oh, okay, we got to the end of the song. Can we do it again? You made a mistake. You got the arrangement wrong. My fear for the last 2 months on tour in America, practicing this bloody arrangement that I didn't like and didn't want to do. And so, can you do it again? And so we did it again, and it wasn't live, but it was worldwide television, and they didn't change it. And
no!
My voice just and it sounded just tight and horrible, and I was just battling the fear of not getting it wrong. Really, I think, So it didn't come out for a couple of months, but they let it go out just like that, and it didn't go down very well. I was like, oh God, to be on New Year's Day. Oh, they said he must have had a cold or something, Well, the others must have been miming. They were all nice, and it was bloody awful, But it did frighten me, and I thought, I wonder what's going on there, because my throat went really tight. It's hard to swallow. But I couldn't hear very well at all. It was like it was as though I'd gone underwater, and I was singing in that kind of atmosphere. So I went to the doctors, and it turned out my sinuses and the back of my throat was a mass of polyps that had almost completely deafened me. And when I got really scared and tightened up, they all tightened up and moved and blocked everything, so I couldn't hear shit.
Wow.
So I had all this stuff removed. They said they made a video, but they said I wouldn't want to see it, and so I didn't. And since then, it's been a lot better. So even though it was horribly embarrassing in front of millions of people, I got at least a diagnosis that put me back on the track to healthy breathing and all sorts of things I couldn't do.
How long ago was that?
About 4 or 5 years ago, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Singing was just getting tougher. I was like, can't hear. The pressure from singing was blowing the polyps to cover my ears because they'd got so big. Anyway, I mean, I don't want to, dwell on it.
Well, that's great that you honestly, you had it taken care of, because I'm always blown away by musicians that can get to, the age that we are and still be able to sing in the same key, or be able to, in our sort of demographic of musicians, we do a lot of shows with like Starship, right? Mickey Thomas, I think he's 74. How the hell can that guy sing in the same key all night, and with the range,
you do learn how to do it eventually. After 40 years, it ends up, you don't learn how to do it. You just learn all the ways not to do it.
Sure.
You keep hurting yourself, and you get rid of those, and you're left with the only way you know how to do it that doesn't hurt your voice, because there's nothing worse than going on. Well, there's lots of things worse, but at the time, there's nothing worse than going on stage with a sore throat, knowing that you're going to struggle to sing the songs as well as they'd like to hear them. And you're going to have to try and distract them with wild gestures and singing off the mic as though you're that passionate you can't.
Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Well, you think about all these things, none of it works,
Right.
And then it's a shame, because you could drive yourself nuts about it, and then you meet the crowd afterwards, they're all blind drunk and thought you were great.
You know what? Here's the thing. We talked about this before we went live, right? Most people in the crowd have no idea when stuff goes wrong on stage, right? So we just played a show in El Paso this weekend. We had no monitors, nothing. Nobody was using in-ears. We were all using wedges. The monitor guy was nowhere to be seen. And so we had no monitor. And I commit to the audience. And I know that you do too. I mean, we've had this conversation where there's a sense of responsibility, right? That the people
that are difficult balance, isn't it? Very difficult balance. The sound at a show up in Berkeley started to get outrageous with the subs underneath the stage that was trying to form a standing wave.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear the guitars, couldn't hear the keyboards, couldn't even hear the snare drum.
Oh.
And I tried to get the monitor guy to convince the guy out front, but the guy out front was committed to making his club sound as big and as loud as possible, and didn't really care, you know. So then I had to say to the monitor guy, look, we're going to give it one more song, and if it's not sorted, then I'm going to like pretend that there's a technical problem, and we're going to go off, and you and the guy from out front can come and talk to me in the dressing room. We'll discuss if there's any more concerts.
Yeah.
So I left it one more song, and it was the same. And I walked off, and they didn't think I was going to. But some of the band didn't like it either. They would have rather battled on.
Yeah.
I said to the crowd, it's a long way to drive in the rain to come here and stand and pretend. So I'd rather risk breaking the mood for a little bit, getting the sound right, and then finishing the show so as I can actually mean it. And you'll notice the difference. Well, most of the crowd applauded. Some of the band said, you know, they thought it was unprofessional, really. There's, you know, that show business, the show goes on. So it's a difficult balance, isn't it? You know, maybe I was thinking about my own enjoyment more. If I can't enjoy it, I don't presume anybody else is gonna.
Well, I'm interested to know what happened. Did the guys come back and work through it and get it fixed?
Oh, of course. No
so you finished the show.
Yeah, of course.
Cool, man.
It sounded great.
Yeah.
But it was a risk.
Yeah.
And you've got a great atmosphere going, and you're going to pull the plug on it and then try and come back on and pick it up for the last 10 or 8 songs, maybe about 8 songs, I think. On balance, I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Upon reflection, I really ought to have my own sound crew with me now and stop being so cheap about things, so that as I do in England, and the sound is fantastic every night. And it's exactly, when you come on stage, it sounds exactly the same as when you came off stage last night. And the story just continues and develops, and the mix out front develops with echoes, and you really start to, is the difference really between 2D and 3D, isn't it?
Right.
You've got your own engineer who's adding their artistry and promoting which bits of the mix they think the crowd are going to enjoy in sequence. And it's hard for the club guy to know what's coming next. Is this a keyboard? Is it toasting? Is it a saxophone? Well, who knows?
Did you say a keyboard or a toaster? Is that
yeah. So they don't know what's coming next with us. And sometimes it will just go all the way through, and the guy doesn't even turn the solos up. You know? So I should do that, and I think we've got to the stature now where we could afford to do it. I was going to do it this time, but I'd already booked this bus. It's another balance. It's a lovely bus, but it's a kind of star coach. So it means it's got this beautiful bedroom at the back here with my own toilet and shower, just the perfect setup. But it's only got 6 bunks. So that's it for you, you know, unless you're going to get another bus, which I'm not. So you've got to pick your best 6. And with road crew, it would be 8, really 9. I could probably do with another guitarist. But that's for the next tour, I suppose we may. You can get buses, of course, with more bunks in them, 8, 12, 14 even if you want. But then the room at the back isn't a proper bedroom. It's just a small lounge that they throw a mattress in that moves all the time. And it's not like being a country star. Last time I was in Faith Hill's bus, you know.
Ooh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, real
Yeah.
nice. It's real nice, but
Yeah.
picked
She's
up
not hanging out on a
photos.
cot in the back.
She picked all the colours herself, Kevin. She did a nice job, you know. And, it was beautiful. You could sing the Star Spangled Banner in her bathroom, and it sounded like you were at one of them rodeo festivals. It just had got that. But if you do what was to be called a band or crew bus, you don't get that luxury. So
Yeah.
I don't know how long I can get away with it.
Isn't that interesting? Like people don't realize, that the people that have come to the shows, like you're in New York right now or New Jersey. Is that right?
I'm in New Jersey,
Okay.
just north of Asbury Park.
Okay.
When we have days off, I normally go to Asbury Park, but there's 2 hotels there, and they've caught on to us, sadly.
Yeah.
Caught on to us because the rooms are very reasonable, less than 200, but we only usually get 2 or 3 rooms and then get to park our bus in the hotel car park. And it takes up 8 or 9 parking spaces. Well, at this time of year, the car park's empty anyway, so it's hypothetical. But now both hotels are like, oh yeah, you can have the 2 rooms, but the parking's $450 a night.
Oh God, yeah, man.
So that was a shame, and it's 2 nights. So I would have spent $1,000 on parking.
Silly.
I wanted to stay in a modest hotel in Asbury Park and walk the boardwalk. So we came somewhere just north of there. I don't even know the name of the town. We just did it by where was the nearest hotel available to Waves Resort. And luckily, there's a huge sort of civic car park right opposite the hotel with an ocean view, sort of.
Nice.
Partial, I think they call it partial ocean view. You have to put your head in a funny position, but you can see. But a quick walk, only 1 minute or 2 minutes walk to the ocean, and we're here for 2 days. So yeah, I like this. It's becoming way more modernized. It had been left behind, this part of New Jersey. It was like a relic of the 60s and 70s, and I kind of enjoyed it for that. It was slightly rotting at the edges, but still grand from its original designs, and I liked it. But now it's getting all the nice buildings are having these metal and steel monstrosities built around them to reflect different bits of architecture and completely ruin everything that was there.
The gentrification.
Make it look like everywhere else.
Right.
So coming up here, I notice it's the same kind of I don't know, it's a mixture of steel bars and Tuscan townhouses. It's this weird.
It's great when you could find the little pockets up there, the boroughs, and we just did Connecticut and Long Island, and the little boroughs there still have that old English feel. It feels like you're
more English than anywhere in England.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Travel around England, I'm like, God, America looks more like England than England now.
They're trying to make it that way. It's a big cycle,
Especially the cities. I mean, English cities look. It could be Pittsburgh, Baltimore.
Right.
It's everywhere you go. It's sort of international shopping mall architecture. It's really odd. So if Starbucks is there, then Old Navy should be.
Right. Right.
Oh, Old Navy's to the left. Well, that's different. Oh, a bit of wonder here in this city centre. So Chipotle's still buying Old Navy. No, that's where Old Navy used to be. Whoa, they're really mixing it up.
Right. Yeah. Like
it does seem a bit homogenous, doesn't it, nowadays?
Yeah.
Most towns you go to. But as you say, there are pockets, and I did used to like to walk from the tour bus usually, or from the hotel, and I'd get a card with the address and phone number on it, and I'd just walk until I either got lost, tired, or scared.
Yeah.
And then I'd find a phone box, and I'd have some quarters before I left, and I'd phone a taxi, and they'd take me back to the hotel. And I used to like to find out about cities like that. I don't like going to all the tourist places. I went to a few. I saw the Liberty Bell. And they were filming a film that day about a president being assassinated, which was really weird, and they had to do it over and over again. So I've got to look at the Liberty Bell whilst I was watching them reenact the assassination of a president. Like
Oh
about 10 times I got to watch it in the afternoon. Okay, and they'll set up again, and then they do it again. And, oh no, he's been shot. That and I was like, only in America.
Only in America. I was just gonna say, man, that is, I mean, that is Hollywood, you know,
I don't know what the film was, but I think it turned out to be quite a big film, you know.
I'm sure. Well, like,
a famous guy playing the president. Now, whether he was assassinated or it was an assassination attempt, I don't know, because they wouldn't allow you down there. Each time after they were shot, they sealed the whole thing up.
Well, yeah, you can't divulge
clear us all back. Get out of here.
You can't clear the secrets of these, you know, these big epic blockbusters. But you talk about discovering some of those cities, and that's my favorite thing to do. You know, even if we don't have days off, but between sound check and the show, you know, if we've got a few hours, how do you spend your time because you guys have a show tomorrow?
Kidding me? I don't leave this room.
You don't, yeah.
I've got YouTube.
That's right.
I've got YouTube. I got 25 news channels, and I've got this lovely coffee cup where you can make your own French press coffee in the actual mug.
Oh,
so you
nice.
put the coffee in the mug, and then you push this filter down, so you get like the freshest, richest, strongest French press, and right there, without having to go to Starbucks. So I don't do much really. I go for a walk, a constitutional, and I walked around the beach a bit today.
Nice.
And in the winter, I hardly come off the bus. People go, how do you do it in this weather? And I say, well, it turns out the weather's only a problem if you get off the bus.
Right. Yeah.
So long as you stay on the bus, it's quite warm.
The heater works.
Run to the gig. Run back. That's the bit I don't like, is when your shirt's wet.
Right.
To bring something to change into. Now you've got to go back to the bus and you're steaming hot, and you go, I'll be fine. And you get halfway and you're like,
yeah,
freezing cold. My throat's seizing up. I shouldn't have been.
There go the polyps again. Damn it. I just remembered, man, you're a sweater also, like me. Like, yeah, that's that. Yeah, because
you know, I don't know why. I did as a kid. I was a competitive swimmer, and you wouldn't imagine really that you sweat when you're swimming, but you do. You sweat a lot, and it sticks to you like glycerin, kind of. So when you got out the pool, you could go.
Yeah.
You make all sorts of noises. It was like you were covered in glycerin or gel, and I know I'm also somebody who immediately sweats the moment they eat bacon.
Yeah. Bacon.
Bacon does it for me. I just, meat sweats. Yes. She's not helpful because for a long while, although not so much at the moment, I was wake and bacon, eggs and bacon, Wakeling. So every morning would be dreadful sweats.
Oh man,
so I've always been a sweater, and I don't mind it really. We did some hot yoga classes a few weeks ago, and I wasn't as good as the yoga as I was when I used to do it kind of seriously in my 20s and 30s, but I could still sweat. Oh,
I'm sure.
I did more sweating than most of them in that class.
I'm with you.
Small lake of it around me.
Oh God, you know, I think, well, a few years ago when we were doing some shows together, one of those, you know, we talked a little bit offline too about how amazing the Lost 80s live tours are, how they bring together amazing groups of fans with an amazing group of bands that have impacted people in a ton of ways. One of my favorite tours that we did was a bunch of the shows with the Tubes. And a big fan of Fee Waybill, love Prairie Prince. And I'd never talked to Prairie, but we had sound check at one of the shows where we were in Denver, right? It was 90 degrees outside at sound check at 1 o'clock. I'm drenched after a few songs at sound check. It looked like I just got done with a 3-hour show. Yeah. And I came off stage and I asked the crew guys, like, look, if there's any way to get a fan for the show tonight, Prairie Prince comes over because the Tubes are on sound checking next. And I go, hey man, you're going to want to get a fan up there. It's so bad. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, dude, look at this. I'm sweating so bad. He goes, man, the only time I'm sweaty on this entire tour is when you hug me. And I was like, damn it. This is not what I want to be.
Mind you, I don't mind because it takes toxins out.
Right.
You know, so it's quite useful for that. but yeah, it can be a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, when people want to hug you after the show, you know.
Oh yes, they're like, oh no, please,
Right.
if you have your photograph taken and your
Oh,
shirt got cold and wet, but you're standing so as it's not really touching you, and then you have your photograph taken, they put their arm around you, and, oh no, my wet shirt's touched my back, and that's the photograph.
that of course the cringe. Yes, sir.
It's nice though. I would never decry it.
That-
We were doing a show very early on, and my mom and dad had come, and they were standing outside. They didn't really want to come backstage, so they were standing outside the front of the club in Birmingham. And so I went out front to talk to them. And as we were talking, they started to get bothered by people. Oh, that was a great show. Oh, can you sign this? Luckily, very few, no phone cameras, but
Yeah.
occasionally somebody with like an Insta camera, disposable thing, or can we take a photograph, and it went on for a little bit, and my mom started to get irritated. So each time a kid came up, she'd be like, tutting, and my dad noticed, and somebody else came up, and before my mom told him to go away, my dad said, it's when they don't want his bloody photograph, that's when he needs to worry.
Good job, Pop. That's
I'm
yeah.
afraid it's stuck with me ever since. And like, can I have a photograph? And I'm like, that's about the last fucking thing I want in the world. Yes, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. Why do you think they didn't want
Just
to come
what I
back
was
in the first
thinking.
place?
You know
Is
what I could do with now? 5 or 6 nice photographs. That'd make me
like, well, did they not want to come back because they figured that you were just going to be inundated with fans, or what was it there?
I don't know. I don't think they knew what it was really.
Okay.
That was a young person's thing. They didn't want to be, I'm not sure about that anyway.
Well, I mean, in Birmingham, you had, of course, I mean, you had, major influence from the British, the huge explosion of British bands, but the Stones were like popping just before as you sort of came up, right? So, I mean, of course, Beatles and
They were
Liverpool.
my first big favourite band. You had to like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. And although I did like the Beatles, I liked the Rolling Stones more. So I had to be on the Rolling Stones side. And they would ask, who'd you like, Beatles or the Stones? People who liked the Rolling Stones called them the Stones.
Sure.
People who liked the Beatles called them the Rolling Stones. And you had to choose. And I did like them. But from Birmingham, the singer and the drummer of Led Zeppelin from just outside there, Leminster, something like that, and Black Sabbath were from Birmingham,
right?
And Priest. So it was black country rock. It was, and Birmingham thinks of itself as the birth of heavy metal. They think it came from Birmingham, although I think it was it was a William Burroughs phrase, as I read it in a book, Uranium Willie the Heavy Metal Kid, he was called in the book. And I think there were some American bands that were things like Blue Cheer and MC5 were some of the start of metal in the pure amounts of power that were used on stage,
right?
That the British heavy metal bands did with Marshall stacks as well. So we had that going, but we also had quite an industrial city. It was Detroit by business, making cars, slowly less and less and less cars now, not many at all, I don't think. And quite a large immigrant population working in these factories. And so you've got white guys, Caribbean guys, and Indian, Pakistani, Asian guys, all working on a car track together. And even though from a distance they look quite different, different food, customs, religion, language, all of that. But something about working on a track really brings people down to the basic levels. And they found out they'd got a bit more similar than they'd at first presumed. For example, they're all in the same sort of trouble with the missus back home when they got home. That would give them something to talk about as guys. And it kind of spread out to the pubs, and socially Birmingham was perceptibly, only just, but it was a little bit more relaxed, and there wasn't the same sense of parallel societies. It was a little bit more integrated. and you'd see people of different colours in pubs. There were some pubs that insisted on colour bars as well at the same time, or private clubs that would only set up as private clubs to make sure that it was only Anglo-Saxon
Really?
alcoholics.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the general population, it was starting to spread out more and more than it did in other cities in England. And same for Coventry, another motor town, Jensen, and Land Rover, Range Rovers, I suppose now.
Jaguar.
And the same thing happened there in Coventry too. And so I think that was one of the reasons why Two Tone started out of Coventry and Birmingham with multiracial bands. And I think it's interesting that the only two-tone, or the main two-tone band out of London, Madness, were all white. And it was not a reflection on them so much, but a reflection of the differences in the societies in London where people could afford to live parallel lives, whereas in the Midlands, you were all shoved in together and told to get on with it.
Right. That amazing that the socioeconomic impact, how it affected
industrial integration. You wouldn't have guessed it, would you?
Right.
You'd think it would come through social programs,
right.
draw people together, but it was the mind-numbing reality of the track that helped to bring people together.
Speaking of industry, like what was the last job you held down, or like a day job?
Firefighter.
Really?
Mm.
So were you like a countryside firefighter out on a truck out?
No,
you're in the city.
Very urban.
Wow.
One of the worst. I did very well on the training course. I came second out of 30 cadets, and the first one got sent to the big station in the city centre, the Prestige station, and I got second prize, which was one of the most dangerous industrial stations in Birmingham, Salt Lake Ward End, Saltley Gas Works, and a load of mom and pop style car component factories that made all the chrome work for cars and would deliver them to the car factories for the track. And so these factories looked like something out of Dickens. They were Victorian factories with baths of different acids and steaming and smelling, and people walking around in clothes covered in burn holes and rags tied around their faces, and no safety at all. And so that was meant to be, I was going to learn quick, and they told me I was going to get scrambled eggs on me hat. You're really lucky to get this one. Well, it was awful. It was exciting, but it was frightening, and it was a bit sad because to save money on insurance, factories wouldn't accurately list the chemicals that they'd actually got in there, because if you've got stuff like sodium or magnesium under oil, or you've got cyanide pellets, which they use for annealing, who knew? And you put water on that, it's a bomb. So you have to pay a load more insurance, so they don't list it. So my job, because I went to a good school, was I had to read the HAZChem list sitting behind the driver, and I had to, in a loud voice, I had to say all the chemicals that were in this factory and all the protocols that could be used and any that couldn't be used, like, for example, water. and so really lucky, not for them, but for me, the other two shifts both had an accident in the same week. One went in and put water on cast iron that was not listed, and the cast iron shattered and fractured and sent shrapnel everywhere. And then the other crew went in, and there was cyanide pellets, and you put water on it, it makes hydrocyanic acid in gas form, and it melted their masks to their face and melted the bottom of their boots to their feet once it got down on the floor.
Jesus, man.
Strong. So it was all stuff like that, nitric acid that would burn a hole one drop would burn a hole straight through your foot if it got near you. And it put me off a little bit. It put me off a bit. And so
watching people's feet melt to their boots. Yeah.
Well, they were just on the other shift, you know, and I started to notice that it was the older ones, even by the 40s or 50s, were starting to kind of move old, look old, like a grey, toxic. And it was the toxins take it out on them, you know. So I'd done it because I was athletic and I really wanted to try and find something to be useful to society, and I hadn't. And somebody suggested, oh, why don't you try out that? And I went for the trials and did really great from the swimming and the athleticism and all that, you know. So I did it and thought I'd be of good use. And but then it put me off a little bit. So as the beat started, I went back to what I'd done before and did sort of various different construction jobs, labouring jobs, what they called in England neck down jobs. So clock on, switch off.
Yeah, right. You're not thinking about
switch back on, you know. So shoveling, doing concrete and buildings. That was quite exciting, and the money was good. And the Irish guys, older Irish guys that were the main construction workers in England, were great fun and great drinkers, terrific drinkers. And,
I'm sure.
I learned a lot.
I bet.
I learned a lot from them. And then the group eventually started taking off more and more, and I couldn't do these early gigs and get back for work on Monday at 8 o'clock. And eventually I phoned the gaffer and I said, I'm not going to be able to come in, you know. And he said, oh, geez, you let us down again. All right, so see you tomorrow. I said, no, what I mean is I'm not be able to come in again. Oh, congratulations, he says.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's good, man. He's like, he understood. This is your passion. That's your dream. Yeah, man.
So that was it then. And so I like that. And I worked at the swimming baths as a lifeguard for a good long time as well. I like that because I was good at swimming. Although saving people's not as much fun as I thought it would be. Well,
because you're an empath, man.
When they're drowning. There's more chance of them drowning you if you're not careful. They grab hold of you and they're like 10 times as strong because they're drowning.
They're fighting for their life, man.
I didn't realize that. That was a bit scary. Lucky you didn't have to do it very often, you know.
You talked about being, emotional early on, and if you're an empath, I've had some good friends that are firefighters, and you can't just shut that job off when you've finished the job, especially if you're residential or a firefighter, you're never turning that off. And I think you're too much of a feeler, to be able to go out there.
Yeah, probably. Like any of those jobs, though, like nursing and anything, isn't it? You learn how absolutely fragile the membrane of life is, and you're only 1 or 2 steps away from the silliest little accident can turn into a catastrophe.
Right.
That's usually the main thing turning up at a fire is the people are like, all I did was
right.
And they just raw.
Yeah.
You can hear the fire burning. It's sucking so loud, but it's not usually something big that starts off. It starts off as a tiny error.
Right. Yeah. Like
turns out into a big catastrophe real quick.
You did mention that, even just, you mentioned that any catastrophe, could affect us at any time. And before we went live too, you were talking about how your perspective on the shows that we do. And I mentioned how a positive effect you had on Mike's score when we're backstage, how this could be our last show, right? Like tomorrow night in Jersey, this might be,
that's right.
For any number of reasons. And we certainly saw it in the pandemic, right? I mean, nobody, the whole
brought it home for everybody, didn't it? And I lost not a lot of friends, but more than I was expecting to lose.
Sure.
Not even friends, people you worked with, you haven't worked with for a few years, and go, oh, John, oh yeah, oh, he's dead. What?
Yeah. Right.
We're with that situation with the beat at the moment because Everett, the drummer, died just over a year ago. So half of the original band members are dead, and all the black ones are dead. only the white ones are alive, which is probably another story about healthcare disproportion. But anyway,
yeah.
But it does make you think, and it keeps reminding me of something I read about Tolkien, who was from Birmingham as well. And we used to play on some of the green belt areas that he'd been looking at when he wrote his stories. So we'd actually play Lord of the Rings or play The Hobbit. My sister learned how to speak fluent Elvish. I mean, we took it really seriously, yeah. And but he was at Oxford just before the First World War, at Oxford University, and 4 years later, 75% of his year at Oxford were dead. So at the age of 25, he found himself into a similar situation that most surviving men don't find themselves until they're 75 or 80, when 75% of your generation's gone and you're the survivors. But you usually have a lifetime to get used to the notion of that. And he had to deal with it at 25, and it was too much. So what did he do? He created a world and brought them all back to life and made their own language so as they could live forever.
Interesting. Wow,
yeah.
That's fascinating. Beautiful.
And that's probably why the story resonates, because it's about World War I and it's about loads of other things as well, or the human bonds that might develop through that. And how funny now, the war with Russia and Ukraine, the Russian troops are called orcs.
Right.
All over to everywhere. It's just, they're the orcs.
Right. Yeah.
And they've never seemed to fight back against it. There's nothing they can do. That's it. They're the orc army.
That's
Tolkien. I think that's probably as strong a weapon as any one particular missile system. Just having to go into battle every day as, the orcs. Oh, God. What are you doing nowadays then, Steve? Oh, you're still in the orcs? Oh, yeah. It's all right. That pays the wages, but it's not the same. I'm looking to get in a different mob if I could, you know.
You I love your narration is fantastic, man. I think when they start doing, more of the adaptations from Tolkien's books, I think that's your job, man. You've got that down. Yeah,
I would like to do that.
Well, one thing that I really I appreciated, you and when you and I were talking before about attitude, walking on stage, having a positive sort of focus and this acceptance, or this feeling of gratitude. For me, I have to have this perspective that I start my day with, looking at things that I'm grateful for, things I'm going to be able to let go of. And, it's a way that I can at least, align and shift my day and my perspective. You seem like you've got a really good focus on that. So what would you say is something that you really feel grateful for? What do you sense of gratitude?
I've always known it, but I've never really been able to do it as well as I can do it now. I think because with more experience, but the past is always harrowing. The future is always worrying, and the moment is always perfect and beautiful. So whenever my mind veers backwards, I usually, and I don't know how I do it, I can let my mind drift backwards to a certain, and I'll remember the worst bit of it. Can't remember much of the joy. You remember about, like, do you remember that time you made a fool of yourself? You think, hang on, I'm thinking about a beach, not that I made it. Somehow memories can quite often become harrowing. You remember the worst of yourself, and looking into the future, it's kind of the same thing. You just, it's anxiety. Yeah. What's the worst thing that could happen? And so your mind is set in that. And but if you can just stay where you are in the moment, even if it's not a particularly nice situation, it's nearly always elegant, beautiful, and a teaching moment. You can learn something more or less all the time if you stay in the moment, but you can't learn anything in the future or the past. And there's a funny story that goes with that, that links to American politics in a way. When Barack Obama decided to run president, I'd liked his speeches as a senator. The one speech had made me cry because I was like, wow, that don't happen often, that a politician touches enough nerves to do that. Just resonated with me. And so I was very impressed. And then somebody in the area of Los Angeles where I was living was one of his organizers for California, and he was coming to his house and everything. And I went to breakfast with this fellow, and he said, they've got the campaign slogan, it's hope. I said, I hope not. He said, what? I said, well, didn't the last black guy that tried to run for president, didn't he try that? And it didn't work, did it? Hope didn't work. I said, I don't like it, Anyway, my daughter was over from England, and I went back home, and we were at a jacuzzi, and I told her about this troubling conversation. And she was, of course, an all-knowing philosophy and sociology student. So she knew everything. And she said, well, that's simple, isn't it, Daddy? She said, hope and fear are the two sides of the same penny.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're in the future or in the past, you can never effect change, can you? Because you can only effect change in the moment. Daddy. I was like, that's right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, let's put it in perspective.
Brilliant.
The next time I saw the bloke, I said, I know why it is I don't like it. I said, because hope and fear are two sides of the same penny, and you can only make change in the moment. Change you can believe in.
Oh, the next slogan. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
The hopey changey thing was to do with my daughter.
Wow.
My fear of using an old slogan that hadn't worked. What was it who used it? And I liked him, the black guy that ran for president in the 70s.
Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was hope. Something, wasn't it? It was something with hope, but it was involved in it.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with it. And I only bring that up because that's the problem in our own lives as well, that nothing changes if we live in our memories, either good or bad, or we live in our hopes or fears of the future. That nothing changes there either. It's the pie in the sky, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You get yours later, but the moment is always perfect of itself. Just how can you fit in and enjoy it? And as you get into the third quarter of your life, heading towards overtime, then those moments become a bit more obvious and a bit more precious because there's less of them to be confused by, I would say. But that only works in a good day. Sometimes you just find yourself, well, what are you sitting there moping about? I don't know. I mean, that's life, isn't it?
It is life, but most of that perspective, though, I mean, just being present and your analysis of it was so perfect. That was
more for me. I just learned it the hard way by doing it, like singing. I tried all the wrong ways first. Right. Until my throat bled, and then I stopped doing that and started singing so as my throat didn't bleed, and then it sounded better, and you just do it more and more. It was by it wasn't learning the right thing, it was unlearning all the wrong things.
Sure.
And so I have to do that. And the great thing, I think, why I have been addicted to the stage is you can only do it if you're in the moment. The moment a drummer steps out the moment is the moment you can't do 5 things in time with everybody else anymore. There is only the moment. So it's great practice for that. The trouble is, can you keep that intensity of the moment into your real life? And I haven't been able to. I can on occasion, but the sheer fear of losing the moment when you're coordinating music with a crowd and with the band, That's all there is, isn't it? It's just moment practice. I think of it most moment and connection practice. Can you stay in the moment and connect regardless of what's going on around you?
Dave Wakeling, we've got about 1,000 sound bites that I could just put in the Dave Wakeling book of wisdom right there. And I think, one of the things that I do oftentimes on this show, because it's just been funny and quirky, is pop up a fortune cookie, to drop your way. But if there's nothing,
you'll have to eat it for me, because I'm toying with the no carbs thing.
Oh, now, well, I should be.
Put it in perspective. I toy with the no carbs thing till about 11 o'clock at night, and then it's Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
man, that is bread. Some bread.
Why is bread the greatest thing now as musicians after a gig? Right, in the 80s, it might have been some other substance you'd put up your nose or something, but right now, yeah, man, the bread thing after a gig is the
food for the pandemic, isn't
it?
I think I'll have the mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and bread. There's 3 choices.
You can't go wrong with bread, man. Except
it's all, if you keep off the carbs for a bit, you'd lose your taste for them. And I'd lost my taste for it. Soups and salads, and I'm losing weight because of it and feel better because of it. But then I started doing you can have carbs at weekends. Right. So I just couldn't wait for it to be. It's Friday night. That's the weekend. Come on, Chick-fil-A. But then you get kind of sad, because if you don't eat it all the time and you have it at the weekend, pizza, I have got to have pizza. I so want pizza. Oh, it's too salty. Oh, I can't eat this. It's hot. And I didn't like it. So your taste buds start to change, and you start to come off the carbs a bit. They're not as attractive as they were. So sometimes I see a big piece of bread and I'm like, oh, I don't know, anybody could eat that.
But I want that in my life. I just need a couple of weeks of as you know, man, the more that you're on the road and all the stuff that's in your catering is there, it's bread, some fruit, granola bars.
We don't do catering at all. We just have we get them to buy it out, because the whole band eat totally different things most of the time, and at different times. Some people go to sound check, go straight out to dinner, come back and do the gig. I can't eat. I can't eat.
A full stomach, that's tough.
I'm not going to eat a big meal, I was taken by those Japanese painters, the ones who do like the stand for ages and then do one circle,
right?
And that's it. Perfect. They've got some from the 16th century. People go, what a circle, but they wouldn't eat for 8 to 10 hours beforehand, because they thought that anything that was going on with your digestive system would affect your circle. So that's something to bear in mind, isn't it?
Yeah. So is that what you do? You're 10 hours before a gig that you won't
no, but I'm not painting circles, but I bear it in mind. If I was painting circles, I'd stick to the 10. If we put that in the set, yes. No, I eat a little bit a couple of hours after getting up, and then I eat a little bit more before a gig, and then I try and eat a little bit after the gig, or eat nothing, or break all the rules and gorge everything that I possibly can,
and feel miserable
and get indigestion and feel like I'm a failure. And then I set myself up by eating all this arugula, which I don't really like because it tastes like furry on my tongue. You can put dressing on it and you can say it's really good for your circulation, but it's still, it's called rocket in England, arugula, which is a nice name, isn't it? But there's some slightly furry about it. So anyway, I'm trying. You get enough blueberries and goat cheese crumbles and some sort of dressing on it, you can get it in you. But it's the salad version of kale, although they put kale in salads now.
It's true, but they just load it up with raisins.
Like mainlining, isn't it? I leave my kale raw. I get into a paste and put it under my eyelids. I like it straight in.
Times have changed, man. From the fortune is it's not as profound as I want it to be, Dave.
Let's look at its different layers, Kevin. It might be saying something to us, mate. Let's have a go.
Oh, well, here's the thing. Okay, it's someone is speaking well of you at this moment, which I know. I don't know that I've met anybody on the planet that's had anything negative to say about you. You know,
I met a couple. I would admit I
yeah,
met a couple, but up until very recently, I was okay with that because I was just convinced that they were utterly wrong.
right. Yes.
They were
Well,
clearly wrong, and they probably think completely differently now. Recently, I found out they might have had a point or two.
uh,
And I
that,
don't think it's just me, it's a Wakeling thing. There's
oh,
a there's another group uh, that was married to a Wakeling, and I met her on a cruise. The two bands were playing, and she said, "Oh, yes," she said, "You're a lively lot, aren't you? Barrel of monkeys." Smiled and left, and I was like, "Oh, so it's a thing.
yeah,
It's a Neanderthal thing, I think, because I got as a present those DNA things, your
yeah,
my ancestry and all of them. So I got three of them, and they're all pretty much the same. I'm English and Irish with a bit of Scandinavian, but only really 1% Finnish. I was hoping for, Viking.
right. Yeah,
I went for Viking,
you,
you know.
you'll
I
take the
fancied
1%.
myself. I had the number one edition of Thor
Oh,
condition. They all went, of course. I had number one Doctor Strange too. But
what
anyway,
happened to those?
somebody who was clever enough to get them out of my dead hand.
Wow.
Probably worth a fortune now,
Yeah.
but I was there as they came out, so it wasn't like a collectible. You just went to the shop and bought the first edition of Thor or the first edition of Doctor Strange. So I did fancy being Thor, but it turned out no. The big news was that I'm in the top 10% of Neanderthal alleles. Mm. The most anybody's got is about 320, and I've got 303. And
Wow.
and funnily enough, Neanderthals had a much, much more pronounced fight or flight response than Homo sapiens because they had to. You might be walking
Right.
through and someone would come and get you,
Yeah.
big animal. So they were always worried about huge animals charging out of nowhere. So they're pretty quick on the fight and flight and 4 times stronger than Homo sapiens
I could see
in
that.
their upper body strength. Um, Their hunting technique turned out to be hanging around in trees, waiting for big animals to wander below the tree, and then they would drop on top of it, wrap their arms around its neck, and wrestle it to the ground and choke it to death. That was their technique. So
I
they're
could,
pretty good at that. Probably punch like Tyson. Bang,
right.
bang.
Yeah. I can picture some of your tour activities already happening, right? This is
Very similar. Very
this,
similar.
the next
Um,
shows that we do together at Lost 80s Live. This is what I expect. The behavior from Mr. Wakeling, like dropping out from above, at the rafters above,
Showing, a bit of a demonstration of what it would be like perhaps to kill a bison,
yeah.
a wildebeest, something of
Right.
that size. You need a good sizable one. You couldn't use a regular cow,
Right.
not
Yeah.
the same. I
Right.
think that'd be a lot better than what we have to watch for the rodeos that we see at the moment, where everybody sits on a cow for 3 seconds, gets thrown,
Right.
and then everybody pretends they did well.
Yeah.
That'd be so much better. Dropping people on cows, can you tip it?
Yeah. But I want to see you wrestle a
You're a
bison. I think that's the one. Like, you're a bison wrestler.
Neanderthal sports. But
Yeah.
interestingly, and you wonder whether it's connected. So Homo sapiens came up out of Africa, didn't they? And at the same time, it was getting real snowy again in the north, in Northern Europe. Whoa, said the Neanderthals, I'm out of here. This is too cold for me, even. You can't choke a bison in this, you can't even see them. So
Hmm.
they started moving south and they met the Homo sapiens around kind of Iraq, Israel, Syria, Lebanon, that kind of area. And that was where they first met and interbred, really.
Mm.
That's where Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. So Africans were the Homo sapiens, right?
Yeah.
White people are a blend of Homo sapien and Neanderthal. So are Asian people.
Yeah.
Black people in Africa who hardly got any COVID
Right.
by some other miracle, because it was the Neanderthal alleles that made us vulnerable.
Mm.
But I do wonder sometimes whether we pick on black people quite as much as we do, because innately we're jealous
Right.
that they're Homo sapiens and we're not.
We're just big dumb Neanderthals.
Stig of the dump. I wanted to be Thor, and it ended up I'm Stig of the dump. I thought I was a Norse god.
God.
What a shame, you know. So we went to England, it turns out, from Denmark or Jutland or Northern Germany, and there was a tribe of them, Wakelingus, they were called,
Okay.
a Saxon tribe, and there's a famous road, a Roman road called Wakeling Street, that was one of those big roads that went right up the country, and like a Roman military road, you know. But Watling Street came from Wakelingus, so it's actually Wakeling Street, or Wakeling. So I'm going to go this year. There's a museum about the tribe, and I'm hoping to go in, and they go, there he is, Stig. He's back. He's back. We knew you'd come. Your lord.
Where is the museum?
I don't know, you know, I've forgotten now. Not somewhere it's on the east coast of England, which is not somewhere that I'm from the Midlands, so
yeah,
we don't go there. If they've got different accents, we don't go there. We don't trust them.
All right, yeah,
much deeper than racism.
It's interesting.
Their accents. You wouldn't drink in a pub with people with like that accent.
I'm fascinated by the whole thing in England. You've got the Scouts up in Liverpool. You know, you've got like, you know, the posh, you know, vibe out.
Yes, and the Geordies up north, and the Scottish.
Right.
It's a challenge every day when you get off the bus. You're like, I say to my American band members, so how much of that evening did you understand? Then there we go. About 20%.
Yeah,
20%,
right.
20% or 15% with the drunk ones.
Right. Yeah.
Just a lot of oh, hey,
that's right.
Oh, hey, hey. Oh, no, hey.
You know that you've got a handful of those.
But it did take me a minute going back. I had to relearn the accents, and I can understand pretty good now. Some Scottish people run away with me, but I can keep up with Geordies now. My mom was a Geordie, so I had an early training in that, and I'm back on form with most of them. But it can get fast. You know,
the Scots, they still get me, man. It's tough. You know, when we go to Scotland, I have a tough time. But I think if I drank,
and they're used to you not understanding them,
right?
So
they pride themselves.
They don't really care, to be honest. So long as they got a chance to say it to you, they don't care. If you
that's right. Yeah, they could care less whether you really listen. That's right. They got it out, man. Dave Wakeling, I really, really appreciate you taking your night off to hang with me, buddy. This is just awesome.
We were going to go skinny dipping.
Oh,
but it's the Atlantic and it's March, and so we decided against that. It was a nice idea. Instead, we're going to watch some other people doing it on YouTube.
Good man. Yeah.
We'll get all the enjoyment of it, you see, without the standing on stones or your stones aching, you know, from
you don't have to worry. There've been shark attacks there off the Jersey coast.
Jellyfish.
Yeah.
As you get older, you think more and more about that. And it's to do with politics again, isn't it? I have this friend, Dominic, and he's a cop, just about to retire, but New York State. And we were discussing politics, how so many of our friends are quite left-wing, even quite extremely left-wing in their youth. And then they slowly sort of become more moderate, then conservative, and can end up quite extreme on the right.
Sure.
It's quite a travel from their young life to their older life. And I don't know about you, sometimes I've met friends that were like that, you know, that were a bit more to the left than me, and away to the right of me now. And you meet them like, oh, wow, what happened there? You know,
the pendulum.
Yeah, well, but my friend, the cop, Dominic, we were discussing it, and he said, well, it's easy, isn't it? And I said, well, no. Why is it easy? He says, as you get older, you get scared. You can't get out the way. If something cracks off, you can't get out the way. So fight in the street, you can't jump a fence, Dave. You can't get out the way. Of course you get conservative. And I was like, he's right, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's not so much you become mean and thoughtless and like, I don't care about anybody like I used to. You're just scared that if something goes off, you're not quick enough anymore to get out of the way. So you want the rules tighter.
Right.
Don't let anybody do anything in case anything cracks off and I can't get out the way. But I thought, how interesting. I thought it was one of the most astute political observations, but he'd made it whilst chasing people down the street and hitting them with things.
Right. Well, as Neanderthals, you're more likely to be able to, like tackle some of those.
You'd think they'd start breeding them again for football or for the armed forces.
I think they have, actually. I think they're there. We just don't, they're not as.
If they're going to make these robot fighters, I think they should do it on my old Neanderthal. They're
going to sample your DNA to get these.
If you haven't got a 54 chest, without the humpback, it's got to be anybody can do that. A ponytail in the way, that doesn't count. They should do, shouldn't they? But, I just wish that it would be a shame. We all get so scared about stuff. Everybody gets defensive. Everybody has to act like real tough about their opinion, even though they know privately that their opinion changes like the wind. Right. They just fight for whichever one they've got that day.
Right. Yeah.
We all have to go through this act, and it would be so much easier if we could drop that, or we could promote a system that helped us to be able to drop that. So we didn't have to be on guard. We didn't have to be on tiptoe all the time thinking somebody's going to make a move or steal a buck. Or it's a shame that we've not managed, and we won't do any good until we do, to create a society where we don't have to be so wary of each other all the time. All right, life's a race, all right, it can be a competition, but we aren't meant to be neighbors as well. And unless you've got a plan that includes all Americans, don't come up with any plans for America.
Right.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
That would cut the chaff a bit. Be like, right, we've got 2 ideas today that say that they could incorporate all America, and you could spend half a day talking about each. Instead, we've just got these ever more pathetic solutions that include loathing over 50% of the people you say that you're patriotic to the country of.
Amazing to me.
Nonsense, isn't it? Which is heavens. Thank heavens that's why it won't work, because it's nonsense.
Right.
And you can bullshit as much as you like on social media or YouTube, but if it's nonsense, in the end it doesn't fly and it doesn't last. So
you got a good platform for it, buddy. You really do, man, because it doesn't come off as that your opinion is the only way. I love that your observations are taking into consideration a global perspective, and I think it's great. And hopefully the more we travel, I feel like I'm less sort of focused on a nation, but because I really kind of feel like we're global citizens, And
it's becoming a bit old-fashioned, isn't it, as a notion, because planes and internet go around the world so quick, whereas it used to take you weeks and then you'd see this mysterious land appearing. So it did really appear that they were separate things, didn't it? Whereas they clearly aren't. They're just outcrops of the same rock that were lucky enough to be taller than the water.
Right.
And it's not enough to kill each other over. We're on this rock. We hate your rock. And don't make no sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense, and it makes less and less sense now. We can even see our planet from outside of the planet and realize that we are interconnected, whether we want to be or not. That's the point. I understand not everybody wants to be kumbaya with everybody else, but
Yeah.
we are interconnected with little choice, you know. And if we don't, we're doomed. So that makes it pretty simple, doesn't it? That
It
makes
does
it
indeed. It does indeed. Oh, brother, man, I do. I so much appreciate your night, and it's
Lovely. Well,
really
thank you for having me. I'll
how,
tell you, it's my first podcast interview. Never done one before.
really
Yeah. No,
well.
mate.
I'm honored. I really am, man. I think one regret that I have oftentimes, is that we get a very short amount of time where you and I get a chance to just hang out and catch up on stuff backstage. And
I'm
so
old
that,
enough to think it's called podding or something.
yeah, that
Hey,
works.
what
Yeah,
are
man.
kids doing? Podding?
Like
Hey, podsters, you know,
yeah.
podmeister.
I think, most people wouldn't get a chance to get this perspective, from Dave Wakeling, not from watching the show. And I absolutely adore you, man. I just think you're a wonderful human being. So I appreciate your
Even
time.
YouTube, though, has an effect, doesn't it? We watch quite a lot of people living in long boats, you know, those boats on the
Yeah.
canals of England,
Yeah.
a lot of canals in Birmingham. And I'd always had a liking of them. And so I ended up following half a dozen bloggers who every couple of days it'd be like their story on the canals and stuff like that. And I got really romantic about it until you realize how freezing cold it was, and you're
Yeah.
walking in the mud and stuff, And usually they start off really great, and by the second year they're coming up with, no, we're still going to keep a boat. Of course we are. We'd never stop boating, but we're getting a house because we've new business plan. But it's really interesting to watch as they become successful on YouTube. They now become YouTube celebrity canal boat owners.
Right.
Hey, coming up at 5 o'clock, and don't forget, next Sunday we've got 3 other bloggers who are joining us like it's some joint bingo session.
Right.
And we've got some more mugs in now. We've got the mugs in, and we haven't got the tea vests, but they'll be there by May. So don't forget to get your orders in.
That's right.
We couldn't help it because we were starting to miss them. Now they'd become stars, like when your favorite band become so popular you can't speak to them anymore. Right. And so we wrote to them one, what's it like now being a celebrity? And of course they bitch, we're not celebrities, we're not. Like, you are.
Counting their YouTube dollars.
Get you. You know, you can start off as passionate as you and you end up as Bill Maher.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
right.
You know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Well, this whole concept became just as we do, man, just catching up backstage, and when the pandemic happened, I missed this.
You missed the backstage.
I totally do. I do, man. So 275 episodes later, you're 275 today. In the last 2 years, almost 2 years. And
that's an auspicious number.
It is.
She's into the numerology. She just nodded.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially because it's just the day after the vernal equinox, 275. You kidding me? Hello. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah. You'll sleep well. You're going to sleep well tonight because of that, Mr. Wakeling. So please give Michelle a squeeze.
We didn't really talk much about backstage, though, did we?
Well, this is what we would have talked about.
We don't talk about backstage when you're backstage.
Exactly.
If I get to do this again, I'll try and remember some of my favorite backstage moments.
Well, let's do it backstage when we tour together this summer.
Oh, yes, that would be good. Would be good. We toured with The Clash, and they'd become a huge stadium act instead of a white punk bar band that wanted the dissolution of all society and start again. And Anarchy. Now all of a sudden they were like the junior Rolling Stones playing similar places, and the costumes were getting kind of more outlandish and scarves and American flags here, there and everywhere. And it was an interesting difference between where they're positioned in the beginning and not very much longer later, 3 years later, how the business can absorb you in. So our dressing room was usually nearest the stage because it was too much noise. We'd get the crappy one and they'd get like something somewhere. So quite often they would have to walk past our dressing room. and we would wait for the moment, either wish them luck, but one bass player, who I won't name, would wait until just as they were coming and go, "Hey, Joe, you going to play I'm So Bored with the USA tonight?" Fog off. But the irony was delicious. And of course, they didn't play the song at that point. Yeah. Will you? You didn't need to know the words. You just need to. Clash for me was phonetic.
Right.
And so that was a good one. But next time I'll tell you the David Bowie story.
Oh, that's a good cliffhanger right there.
Backstage with David Bowie coming up.
I love it. Oh, that's so good, man. All right, well, you guys heard it. So that's the opportunity for you guys. Hit the subscribe button so then you get notified when Mr. Wakeling and I, when we get to do English Beat and Flock of Seagulls shows with Lost Eddies Live this summer. We'll make sure that we have the Bowie backstage story.
Got a nice Flock of Seagulls story I'll share with you too.
I can't wait for that one. I just realized you're right. You're right there. I took this shot over New York City a few weeks ago when we were there. And so there's Jersey right there. I recognized it. Yeah, but so you're just south of that right there. But yeah.
Oh, wait. No, yes, that's right. Yes, we're just south of that. Yeah, exactly. Yes. We're a bit closer than Asbury Park, in fact.
Okay. Yeah. We'll knock them dead tomorrow night.
It seems like we're a bit closer to the city, or it's not too far. I might go to Asbury Park tomorrow, but I'll probably just watch a walk tour on YouTube. And then, I don't know, where'd you fancy next, love? Well, I've always fancied the Maldives. I've always fancied the Maldives. I don't know why. I don't even know where they are. Sardinia. That's another one that was on my bucket list, and I've been there now a dozen times. I've seen it. I've smelt it. Sardinia. I don't need to line up at the airport and be quizzed by somebody. Wow, what are you doing here? How much money you got? The hotel room's not ready.
I hope you've got YouTube, like you've got the pro version, right? So that
yes,
no ads.
Yes. Although it's funny, isn't it? Because you do it on your account and then you use it on other machines and somehow you're still stuck with the ads. It was like, it works. I haven't worked it out. It's like that with Hulu as well. I was like, but I paid for no ads. Oh, not on this device, you didn't.
Right. Yeah.
So, I don't like that. I don't like the ads. It spoils it, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
You're not in Sardinia there. It breaks the mode. It breaks the fourth wall. There I was in Sardinia or on a boat in Vietnam.
And all of a sudden the Viagra ad came up and reminded me, right?
Why don't you ask your doctor if Wha'ppen might be right for you? Right. You might not feel sick yet, but I bet you're going to. How's your knee? Is it starting to hurt a bit? Wha'ppen might be right for you, but it'll kill you. And wow, God, it might give you like a infection of the perineum. It's like you're already sick. How you doing, Dave? I was doing all right, but I don't know what's happened. It's like I sat on some nettles or something. Why would you want that as a side? I'd rather die of whatever it was. It's like acid. Lord.
Oh my God! The next time I see you, all I'm going to think about is your perineum infection. So.
You've been that way for ages, Kevin.
Yeah. That's true.
Bloody 80s. I was there, mate. I know what they were up to. I know what it's all up to.
God.
Makeup and the big hairdos. Get at it. Interesting times they were, and they're interesting times now, but they're too fast and too young and new for me. So whereas I got people of different colors being treated equally and having being friends with people who'd got different skin colors, I got that. And I got that the gay boys at school shouldn't be beaten up or have to join the Catholic Church as the only sanctuary, or the theatre or the BBC. And they didn't have to get beat up for that. And I understood that. And we went through those revolutions straight after women, sort of the 60s, being emancipated, as it was called. being treated as people, what they
Right.
meant. And so it was okay, and it got through that. And now I find myself more confused because I understand gender fluidity, but I don't understand drag reading classes. I don't understand anybody in fishnets reading stories to kids. I wouldn't, I like you, Kev. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'd call you Brent. Don't come around my house in fishnet, start trying to read stories to my granddad. You know what I mean? You know, as much as I love you. So
Noted.
I don't get it. So I don't come out against it so much because I don't understand it. Like
Sure.
my dad didn't understand how gay people, you're meant to hide it. They're meant to hide it. That was how it was done in their day and age, and so he didn't understand it. And I don't really get the transgendery thing as well as I ought to. My little experience of it is that the parents are clearly aware so much going on, and it takes a lot of love and work between the kids and the parents and doctors to even take this on. And you'd probably think all those people in my generation that didn't even know whether they could come out as gay probably included a percentage of people who also felt gender conflicted, or what, I don't want to use the wrong word, but whatever the right word, and I only know one set of circumstances like that, and 2 years later that person isn't suicidal but loves going out on family weekend trips, and everybody's smiling and happy, and nobody's stuck in their bedroom crying, nobody's killed themselves, and nobody's having to stay awake all night wondering if somebody's going to kill themselves during the night. And so that seems to me that's good. And what if they change their mind? Yeah, okay, like everybody in life always does. But they're not crying now, they're smiling now, so that would seem that's their business.
Right.
I don't need Elon Musk's opinion about whether he believes these parents might be propagandizing their children. It's like, your kids, well, he doesn't, but the people who spend time with their children, you'd know if you got a boy who's feeling and looking like and acting like his sister, or a sister that's acting like a brother, but
if you're connected.
So but I don't say that I fully understand it, but it is the next thing, isn't it? It's the next step on, so that people could accept different gender aspects of their own personality. And luckily, I'll be dead before I have to take that course on, because it's already too confusing for me. But
you know what, though?
Even if that's where it's heading,
even if it's confusing to you,
all for the best, isn't it?
Well, you just mentioned, that you don't understand it as much as you should. And honestly, the fact that you even acknowledge that maybe it's something that's outside your scope of understanding, I think that's what helps anybody, if they can admit that, there's a certain amount that they just don't know about it. So why pass judgment or pass laws about it if you don't know, right?
You scream it's wrong.
Right.
Because it's wrong. That's why. Girls are girls. That's why. That's why.
What would Bowie say?
What if they're not? Yeah. What would Bowie's?
Right. That's we saved that for the Bowie story, because I saw that Susie here. She's like, there are so many people here. That's actually really cool in the chat that have weighed in on different aspects of what you've talked about. And I realize we've kind of covered it.
The logic of Homo sapiens. A bullshit faith. I think that's where he was heading to that's the angle I think he would have took on those.
I think you're right. Yeah. But we covered it all, man. We hit it all. We got
Don't believe in yourself. Don't believe in belief. Knowledge comes with death's relief.
You've even got his inflections, brother.
Oh, I could do a smashing David Bowie in my day.
Yeah,
I could do a real good impersonation. I was good at impersonations. I could do Brian Ferry, pretty good.
I could see
do
that.
David Bowie pretty accurately. Early on, I could do a superb Robert Plant at 13. I could hit all of the notes, knew notes, and I could hit the ones he fudged. Not so much now, of course, you know. Come from the land of the ice and snow, but I could do it. It sounded just like him.
Wow.
I think that's where I got pretty close to Andy Williams'
Wow.
voice on Can't Get Used to Losing You. So I tried to impersonate him, and that was as close as I could get. And I could do a smashing Van Morrison. I knew all the words to that. And a Tim Buckley that took people's breath away sometimes. I got all 5 octaves on his best ones, and but not now. Not now.
Dave Wakeling's karaoke night is going to be really fun, man. I'm looking forward to this one.
If I still had the tubes, yes, it would.
Well, it doesn't stop a lot of people.
Let it all hang out. Let it all hang out. I like the live records the best, so I could sing like Van Morrison live, and I like live records.
Yeah,
at the time they seemed a lot more exciting than the 70s very studio multi-tracked, and had to be listened to in an arena or an amphitheater for it to make sense. So I like live records sometimes because it kind of cut through that a bit.
What's your favorite live record?
Bob Marley lives are terrific.
Wow, nice.
You know, I like the versions of the songs better than I do on the album. Some of them, different times. Bob Dylan, smashing, and Van Morrison. I thought at the time, I think those were my 3 favorite live records when I was thinking of doing it.
Yeah.
You know. All right, you got to go.
Well, I do, but this is fascinating, man. We're doing this again, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it live, but we're going to do it backstage at.
We'll do all the technological bit at sound check.
Yeah, right.
Because of having to change formats, I didn't have Kayvon's commentary.
That's true.
I don't even know if he's here. I've been saying everything as though he is here.
Good.
Because I know if he is, he's going to be bringing up. So, Dave, I'm very interested, Dave. I noticed that you said. Quite different from the interview that you did, the Toronto Star 1979. The first time you came out, I think it was with Peter Bryce, I think. But you said quite a different opinion about. Do you think that's the years over the years that you've changed your mind on this, or have you just changed your opinion just because you feel differently philosophically?
My God, you have him down, guys. If you're watching this and you have no idea what Dave Wakeling's talking about, there is a super fan. He's Dave Wakeling's shadow. He's currently traveling back from hanging out with Killing Joke in the UK, only so that he could probably catch your shows on the East Coast. But his name is Kayvon Zavetti, and Zahedi, sorry. And he's actually been here on the show. I had a podcast with Kayvon. I had to, because he's got as many crazy stories as anyone. But Dave Wakeling just did a spot-on impersonation of Kayvon, and it's a little uncanny. It's disturbing, but I do want to thank Risa Royale. Thank you so much, Catherine Wilcox, for becoming a super fan of the show here. So thank you. There
you go. So
all of you guys that are here, I really appreciate it. Mike Skill, man, I miss you, brother. We really, it'd be great to be able to see Mike Skill out there rocking and doing what I like about you to the fans again soon. So, Mr. Wakeling, have a great show tomorrow night. I really hope, and please give my best to Coops. It's wonderful to have seen her, popping in and out.
Enjoy your stages until I see you next.
You got it, buddy.
Be ironic about things.
I can't wait.
I'll be like, oh, look at this lot. That seems to be mine and yours game on the side of the stage. Like, oh, look at this crowd. What that'll be all right. It'll be all right.
Taking everything for granted.
Like we know what's going on, and we're just like, oh yeah, let them get on with it.
That's right.
What like other people.
That's right.
Watch out, here they come, people.
That's right.
I had a sign on the front of the bus just as you're getting off the bus, and it said, watch out, weirdos.
Yeah. They're out there.
It was usually right. You'd open the door and you was like, that was a good warning, wasn't it? There,
yeah.
Watch out, weirdos.
Good heads up. You've got your share of them, man, but a lot of people are loving on you. So, as do I. Thank you, buddy, so much. Have a wonderful show. Safe tour, and I'll see you.
Send my love to Scory.
I will. Thanks, buddy. Take care. All right.
Bye, everybody. Bye.